Brother Terry Yoder is coming to speak for us at this time. He is the associate pastor at the Hamilton Heights God's Missionary Church. Lord bless him as he speaks to us this afternoon.
Thank you. It's so good to be here this afternoon and speak. And I'm just trusting that God will help today. It's not like I have a message or a sermon per se, but when Pastor Malloyd, not Pastor, I'm used to him saying that. When President Malloyd, he asked me to speak, he asked me to share my life story. And as I was thinking over my life and just a verse that stuck out to me, one of my favorite verses is in Proverbs 3, and I know you know it all. It's verses 5 and 6. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not on thy own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." How many of you like going on a road trip here? Not now, but I know many of you. I love a good road trip. My wife hates a road trip. She, like the first 10, 15 minutes she's done with a road trip. But I love a good road trip. And one of the important things when on a road trip is to figure out what is the best way to get from point A to point B. For most of us, for me this afternoon, what I always do is I pull out my phone and I go on Google Maps and I just do a quick search, a type in, and see where I should go, how I should get there. Maybe for others, they use a GPS, and if you're real old, and I can still remember it, the epic road trip. You go on mapquest.com, type it out, you print out your directions, and there you go. You have your big giant map checking where you're at as you go along your way. Always trying to figure out what's the best way to get from point A to point B. And for me, the best way normally is the fastest way to get there. The fastest way. Sometimes, though, I'll take it a little bit easier. I'll go the scenic way or the way that I think is the shortest. And I often wish that the direct path was the shortest, but it isn't always the case. Sometimes I can go a longer way and go faster if the speed limit allows it or anything like that. And I feel like in life so many times, we like the direct path from where we are now to where we think or where we hope we're going in the future. But life isn't about direct paths. So many times there's curves, there's twists. Every once in a while it feels like you're doing a U-turn, like where did that actually come from? But I would remind you today, this verse, to trust in the Lord. And it ends with saying, "He shall direct thy paths." Trust. I feel like it's been a major theme in my life, and I want it to be a major theme in yours. When we trust in the Lord with all of our heart, God wants to direct each and every one of our paths. It may not seem like the direction He's leading us is the right direction. It may seem it's the total wrong direction, but God will be there. God will be leading and guiding if we trust in Him with all of our heart. I grew up in a Christian home. I was blessed to say that I had parents who served Christ, parents that took me to church every single day. I have siblings that serve Christ that are doing their very best, and I love being in a Christian family. And I hope and I pray that every single one of you young people here have that in your life. The fact that you can have a Christian parents, a Christian siblings, and you can talk to them about God. And because of that, my salvation story is different than most of what you hear. I was saved at a very, very young age. And honestly, I don't have great memories at a young age, and so for most of it, it's a little foggy at best. I don't know if I can say the exact moment, remember the exact time when I gave my heart and life to Jesus, but I remember wanting to serve Him ever since I was young and knowing that He had saved me. And as I grew up and grew older, there were bumps. There was times of failure along the way, but every time God was right there, I could run right back to Him. And that memory of getting saved as a young boy continued to seem to grow fainter and fainter away. And Satan knew this. And one of the things that he always used to do was to throw doubt on my mind. I could remember we moved churches in my early preteen years, and as my preteen to teen years, we started attending the Beavertown God's Missionary Church, over right across the parking lot in the Bait Center now that it's called. And I can recall at youth camps and different events wondering and questioning, had God truly saved me? What was on the inside? And I'd go up and I'd pray. I didn't feel any different. I thought, I'm not doing anything wrong that I know of. Seems like everything's going well, but there was still doubt in my mind. And it was on one of those trips to the altar over at the Bait Center, and as I was praying about that same issue, that Satan kept on casting doubt in my mind. As I was praying, I remember Pastor Jeff Stratton, who now I am so thankfully able to serve under. He was praying with me, and he gave me some good godly wisdom and some good godly advice up there at the altar over the matter. And he said, Satan, he's a liar. If you know that you're serving God, if you know that God has saved you in your heart, you can claim it. You can put your trust on it. You can have faith in what God has done for you. And I remember that moment as a milestone moment in my life, because when I planted the flag and said, God, I trust that what you've done for me as a young boy still sticks with me today. God had truly saved me then, and I knew that he did. I was totally his, and I was wanting to serve him. And that's what I did my best to do. I did my best to serve him. I loved anything that we could do as a youth group. I loved going on missions trips. I loved youth camp. Such a fun time. I loved when we had our gym nights with the Beavertown youth group. All these exciting things. And as I continued to grow up and grow older at Beavertown, I continued to attend all those things and be plugged in and be involved in all that I could do. But I didn't really know what my future held. I didn't have the end path. I didn't know what my point B destination was. I really didn't know what to do, and I hadn't felt clear about anything in particular. And President Matt, he was my pastor then again, I'll say, he would have chats with me. He would invite me to breakfast. We'd sit down, we'd talk. And he'd ask, he'd say, Terry, do you feel any leading, any guiding, any direction in your life? And I can always remember clearly saying, I have felt nothing. Nothing about if I had a calling. Nothing about if there was a Bible college God had spoken to me specifically about. Nothing if there was any future plans that I had. And I just continued on going through life. Right after I had graduated from high school in the year 2014, I didn't really know what to do. I was working, I had gotten a job, and I decided that it would be good to go to Bible college. And I'll just put a plug. I think it is good to go to Bible college, even if you really don't know what you should do. And so I did. I took a couple of classes. I worked as well. During this time, I took my basic, Old Testament survey, New Testament survey, Gospels 1 and 2, all those good basic classes, the 710s of Penview. Gotta love those right there. I took all of them. I didn't really know what was going on. I did my best in them. I didn't have a plan per se, but I continued to do my best to serve God. There were still ups and downs spiritually. There was moments still of failure, but God, he always was there. I'm glad that he always helped me back up again. And at the end of those semesters, I didn't feel like I needed to continue on, and so I just started working full-time in that 2015. I continued to help. I taught some youth Sunday school. I went on missions trips. I went to youth camp still. And on it went, and life just seemed like it was rolling along. Not sure what exactly was going on. I didn't have that goal. I was still just trusting God as far as I knew, but I never knew what was God's plan for me. What was God's path for me? I wanted a direct path. That would be nice, God. And it was in the summer of 2017. I remember I was an assistant coach at GMYC, and the theme that year was all in. Bright red shirt, just said all in across the front. So it was a great theme. And the speaker was Brother Aaron McCarty. And one evening, as he was preaching on David. and the plague that had happened when David had done his census. And God, he had stopped the plague there at the threshing floor of Araunah. And as he stopped it there, David went to Araunah asking to buy the land. He wanted to build an altar there for God for stopping the plague. And this is what he wanted to do. But Araunah had different plans. He wanted to give all that he had to David for free. He wanted to give his land. He wanted to give his oxen. He wanted to give his tools of his trade. He wanted to give each and every part, not for a price, not to be bought out in any sense, but he wanted to give it to God for free. And the part that stood out to me that evening, I don't remember too much else what Brother McCarty spoke on, was the point that Araunah was willing to give up his job, his way to make money, all that he had. He said, God, it's yours if you want it, for free. And God spoke to me so clearly as I went up to the altar and prayed, and he asked me, would I be willing to give up my job if he asked me? Would I be willing to trust in him? Would I let him decide to direct my path? Could I say yes to him if he asked me to be willing to give up my job? And in that moment of prayer, and as I was praying there, I felt so clearly as I surrendered and said, yes, God, I trust you. You can have that part of my life. It's yours. God gave me a direct path, you may say. It seemed a little late, but God called me to preach. And God called me specifically to Penview. And as I got up from the altar, I remember that day, still till right now, how God gave me the calling, and something that will forever stick with me, because it's such a milestone moment in my life when I trusted him with my whole heart. I love those type of moments. Those moments don't happen every single day. Most of the time, it's a day-by-day thing, but that was such an awesome thing. And when I got up from the altar, I know I had work to do. It's easy to say yes at the altar and then go home and stop trusting. The altar is the easiest place to say yes, but it's when you're home, when you have to say something else, that's when the yeses come a little bit harder. But God helped me to go to work, and I told him, listen, God has called me to preach. I need to stop working full time. And so I prepared. I contacted Penview. I got everything ready, and I started going to Penview to preach. It was such an awesome thing because God had directed my path. It didn't make sense. It felt like way back there in like 2014, where was the direction back there? It felt like now I had gone on with my life, and now I was making this U-turn right back to where I was already there. Why didn't God give me any directive when I was all the way back there? But I know that in God's perfect timing, he put me there at that place in that moment because that's what he wanted me to do. God, he laid there at Penview good godly friends that I still am able to keep in contact with. God gave me a good love story. Everyone loves a love story. And God, he laid out that perfect plan right there for me so that it would have been that December to start dating Jackie. And soon, a little over a year later, we got married. God gave that perfect love story right in his perfect timing. As I said, I never really understood why he waited at the moment. But looking back on it now, I understand that God, he had the plan all directed out. All I had to do was trust him. All I had to do was follow him. It was there at Penview. I remember that God spoke to me about some specific issues in my life, some things that he needed full surrender and full control, and the one issue was my phone. Oh, the age-old phone. And as I prayed, I said, God, that phone is yours. Whatever you want, if you want me to get rid of it, if you want me to get a flip phone, God, I can get a flip phone if you need me to. And God, he sanctified me entirely He gave me the victory right there at Penview, that winter revival. I remember I settled it there with God. I trusted in Him. He guided, He directed in my life. And as I've continued to serve Him, I have continued to see God's direction in my life. It hasn't always seemed easy, but there's always milestone points, always big things when you serve God. I can remember as I was getting ready, it was my junior year, I think it was, of college, I knew I had a bill coming up. I had got something, I knew I had this bill, and I wanted to sell my car to pay for this. And I had tried all fall to sell my car, and I could not sell it. And so I waited again. I tried in the spring. And wouldn't you know, the very day I sold my car was the day the bill came. And God met that need exactly when He needed to. All I had to do was trust in Him, and He was directing my path. God has continued to work. He has made all the difference in my life. My wife and I started going down to Chambersburg, Pennsylvania on the weekends in my senior year to help down there. And God has led us there to serve there. And God has continued to work in our church down there. And as we moved down there, I was in need of a job. And I had applied a couple different places. And finally, it had come. I got interest from someone. I went there, and it was a little bit of a drive. And I thought to myself, as I left, why would I ever want to work there? It's so far. And I didn't have much of a desire, didn't have much a thing, but it seemed like the only door that was open. There didn't seem to be any other option. And I thought, all right, I prayed about it and felt clear that I needed to do something. And so I did. And it was there that first week. There was a man I met. His name was Sean Hess. And Sean, he walked up to me and he introduced himself to me. And we just started talking. And Sean said, he asked me why I moved down here. And I said I was a pastor. I was needing a job. And he was like, I just got saved this spring. This is in 2020. And so most churches in Maryland were closed. And he said, I'm looking for a church. I need to find a church. And I said, well, if you're willing to drive, our church is open. You can come. And Sean, he started attending our church faithfully. And God has used Sean in our children's ministry, in our teen ministry. And Sean has been a blessing in our church. He drives over an hour and 20 minutes or so just to come to church and to help out. I didn't think that job meant anything to me. But God already had a plan in place. All I had to do was trust Him. And as I close this afternoon, young people, I want to remind you, as Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says, don't lean on your own understanding. Don't lean on that. Don't try to get your path the way you want it to go, what you think is the best way from where you are now to where you want to go. I challenge you to trust in God with your whole heart, to lean on Him, to acknowledge Him. God wants to direct each and every one of your path. And it may not always seem like the path is straight or going the way you think or you would like it to go. But if we're trusting, God is always directing. We don't need to see the whole picture. We don't need to see all the way down the road. But I can acknowledge and I can testify today, when I trusted God, He has blessed me more than I could ever explain, more than I could ever share. And God has directed my life, and I pray and I trust that He will direct your life. I know He will if you trust in Him. Don't give up on Jesus.